Hello friends, today's video is a very special one to me. A longtime friend of the family asked me to recreate this sweater that he bought about, I think he said 18 or 19 years ago, and his daughter loved it a lot, so he wanted me to make another one so that they could both have their own. So I was very excited to do this, very honored to do this for them. I didn't tell them I was making this video, but I knew it was something that would be very special to them, so I hope that you guys enjoy this video. I didn't know exactly what the details were that made them both love this sweater, so I wanted to try to recreate every detail as accurately as I possibly could. So I started by taking a ton of measurements. Thankfully, this was a pretty simple construction. It was seamed, and it was mostly rectangles. I thought it was going to be a lot easier to recreate than it was. It was actually kind of difficult. It took a lot of math and figuring out of things, but there were also enough easier areas that it wasn't too big a problem, and it was really fun to make this because I knew that they would both appreciate the work that went into it. I'm not sure what needle size I'll need to get gauged, but I'm going to start out with a US size 10 or a 6mm, and we'll see what that gets us. The gauge is kind of inconsistent with this because the yarn is not very consistent. I don't know that it's homespun, but it's very inconsistent. So I'm going to use some of the black yarn. This looks gray in the light, but it's actually black, to make a gauge. Pulling the wrong yarn, but oh well. I'm going to use a long tail cast on method just because that's my favorite, and now I'm going to make my very first swatch ever. I've never ever made a swatch. I always measured my actual knitting to see if it was kind of close to gauge, and a lot of times I ignored the gauge completely. So I'm going to cast on 14. So I blocked this, and it's a lot softer now that it's been blocked. And stitch count wise, this is very close, but it is definitely not as dense. I just pulled out the other sweater and I just felt it, and it's not as dense. So even though the stitch count itself looks very similar, it must have been a thicker yarn, or a less fluffy yarn, because it's a pretty thick yarn, but it squishes easily. So I think it was just a denser yarn or a thicker yarn, possibly both. So I'm going to knit this again at a smaller gauge. I almost want to go down 2 needle sizes, but I think I'll just go down 1 and see what I think. But I'm very excited about this. Also, I realized even though this looks very black, like on camera it's looking more gray, but it looks very black, especially when I hold it next to the black yarns. But beside the sweater, you can see all the blue in it and stuff because it's not as dark of a black. It must be a blue-based black. was so happy. I calculated when to make my increases and all that based on measurements alone from the cuff, the midsection of the sleeve, and the top of the sleeve. And I divided them in half, did all the calculations to figure it out when I should make increases, how often I should, because my gauge is different from this, and all that. It's kind of fun. It kind of feels like I'm in school again, but it also is very fun because I always did enjoy school stuff. Math took me longer, actually, to be honest, to enjoy. But I did eventually enjoy it once I learned practical applications for math. And this is practical, so I can use that now. Just to be honest, I don't have to do math very often. Anyways, that's just off topic. But I matched this up, and at first I thought it was not the right size. But then I remembered the increases are all on one side, and I'm currently in the middle of a row. So I flipped it to where the beginning of the round was on the same side that they made their increases, because it kind of makes it a bit of an angle on one side. I matched it up, and let me just show you. Look at how well that matches up. This is the edge of his, the edge of mine. Look at that. It is super close. And he did a great job choosing this yarn. It's a very close match. It's not quite as black as his is, and it's slightly different thick as mine, which around. It's a slightly lighter black than his is, but it is very, very similar. The people at the yarn shop that helped him figure out the yarn, and the yarn that he picked out, it was a combination of both. They did a really great job in helping him find a very close match to this. I'm very happy with it. The thickness, the density, all of that is super similar. Mine is a tad less dense than his, but I think that's because of all of the years it's been worn and it's slightly felted. But I am very happy with how close this is matching up. I'm kind of having to hold myself back from giving him too many updates because I want him to be surprised, hopefully in a good way, by how close it matches up. So I don't want to send too many photos, but I also like keeping them updated. I'm happy. It's been so fun to work with a bulkier yarn than I normally do, and in a good quality. I don't like working with acrylics and that kind of stuff, so it's nice to work with a bulky wool yarn. I worked with bulky acrylic, but I did not enjoy that, so this is fun. I am officially starting the color work. It was very exciting. I thought I would have to take a lot, but then I realized my edges were just curled when I did it. It was still slightly smaller, but not very much, and I knew I needed to increase one stitch anyway to make it an even stitch count, so I think it'll be just fine. And with blocking, it did grow a little bit, my swatch, so I think that'll be okay. Joining the yarn using an intarsia method, so I'm just going to twist the yarn a couple times, then pinch that with my fingers. Then you twist the new yarn to your old yarn color, and you just knit using that new yarn. And keep holding on, and once I knit like 2 stitches, I tighten it a bit. And keep going. I'm only doing 4 stitches of this color though, the first row. There's the very first bit of color work. A few times. I was going to make my chart in a knitter's book, crafting book, but then I realized that the page is not wide enough, for me to do that. Like, it has all the knit stitches, but it's not wide enough this way, and that's the way the stitches run, so I cannot do it horizontally. So the design was not going to fit, and I didn't want to take up 2 pages. I did consider start doing that, but then I just changed my mind because that just wasn't going to work. And then I figured out how I was going to do the chart. I was just going to write it out row by row, because I already had planned on doing written instructions in the chart. I think I'm just going to scrap the idea of a chart and just do written. But then whenever I went to go match up the fabric against the sweater, I've already taken this out one time. I had this piece done, and then I measured it, and it was like 2 inches off or something. It was like a little over 2 inches too wide. So I took it all out, and then I realized that was based off of my swatch calculations. So I took it all out after I had done like an inch and a half or so of knitting, re-knit it, got it as long as I needed before doing the chart, and now I just matched it up, and I realized it's too small. So I must have measured it wrong or something. I don't know. So now I've got to take this all out and restart before doing the chart. So now I'm going to do that. Finished the color work. I was so excited. So there's a few mistakes, like here. I followed the pattern on the first original one exactly, but it looks a little bit off here, so I'm going to use some double stitch to fix that, but I'm leaving it as it is for now, so that when I write the instructions for the front panel, I can fix that in the pattern, so it doesn't need any double stitch. So there needs to be fixed in the pattern when I alter it for the back panel. As well as right here, I accidentally, I don't know what it was, my chart was wrong somehow, or possibly I counted the stitches wrong, I don't know. But for whatever reason, there's a little bit more of the shadow there, so I'll cover up this with the double stitch, and again, fix that in the pattern when I write it for the front panel. But I'm pretty happy with that. I thought it would be easier copying a pattern. Oh, and I want to fix right here. Make them not touch as much. I thought it'd be easier to follow a pattern and like duplicate a pattern than it would be to make my own pattern, and I think neither of them are easier, honestly, because I counted every stitch, and some areas it was wrong and some areas it was right. And I even noticed in the original they did some things like sew 2 stitches together or knit 2 stitches together to fix it, and I think that pattern was totally like, I think they totally wing it. I want to say wing it. Past tense is wung it. I don't know, weird. You know, I think they made up their own pattern as it went, because there was a lot of things like that where they were knitting 2 stitches together where there was no reason for it, like in the middle of a petal, and just a lot of odd things. So I'll fix here, here, and here. Make that more of a gradual curve. Disconnect those two. Connect gray shadows here and make that shadow shorter. But I don't think it's too bad. Oh, and I would take it out, except this is what the back looks like. And that would waste a lot of yarn and be a lot of work as well. So instead, I'll just write the pattern differently for the front. And later you can weave in all these ends. How to do all my decreases when I was already tired and already had a headache. And there's Dad. Hi. Myself documenting making the sweater. Anyway, the decreases did not work out, so it was going to be like 6 inches deep, which would mean a really deep neckline, which is not going to work. Now, congratulations. Thank you. The J's backwards. On my side it is. Anyway, I did the decreases every single row instead, and that is working out much better. Talking about the decreases. Oh, now it's just right. Anyway, now everything is matching up perfectly. I lined this up just a second. It's lining up perfectly with the neckline. This will work, but working out perfectly. I'm very excited.
up. She's finished. Ooh, sink it. It's disgusting. Don't play with it. Ta-da!
It was so satisfying to finally see both of them folded up on top of each other, looking quite similar. And while it's not perfect, it was similar enough. It made me very happy to see what I managed to do. But I wasn't quite done yet. His original sweater had been well loved, and the cuffs and a few other areas had gotten a bit of wear and tear, and one of the seams had started to come undone. And I actually had planned on asking him if he was willing to let me repair this, and then he asked if I could. So I was pretty excited about this chance because I've been really into learning invisible mending and almost invisible mending, as well as visible mending. So just like all kinds of mending. It's always been very interesting to me. And this was so fun to do. In some areas, I had to pick up stitches that had dropped. Other areas, there was no fabric left, or the stitches were really thin, so I used duplicate stitch to cover those up and reinforce them. And then on one of the edges, it was everything was still there, but the patch had gotten very thin. So I decided to use a little bit of crochet there. So I used a few different things. And now their sweaters share the same yarn, which I think is really sweet and special, and they match even more now. Before sending it off, I gave his original sweater a good wash because I knew that he didn't have a good setup for that, and it was just another touch I could add. I didn't want to block out the freshness of the sweater because the stitch definition was really good. So I didn't block them, and I kind of regret doing that because it turned out a little bit shorter with the rolled purl edge. Even though the length is technically the same, because of how it curls up, his ended up being a little bit shorter. But I know that for next time, and that will remedy itself the first time it gets washed. And now here's a picture of both of them wearing their sweaters. The sun is shining. Why does the sea rush to shore?